Chapter 73, The Week 4. Hospital, 4th floor. Emma's face was rather strange as she followed Kevin from behind. As they walked, she couldn't help but notice Kevin's shoulders occasionally tremble from time to time. Kevin, about Jean. Just when Emma was about to mention the matter regarding Jin's sudden change in attitude, she was suddenly disrupted by a small burst of laughter. Though Kevin tried his best, he finally couldn't hold back and laughed out loud. Makeup remover serves as a great women repeller. Thinking back at what had happened on the rooftop, Kevin couldn't help but laugh out loud. Though the joke wasn't even that funny, it's just the way he said it. His face was so serious. I can't. Looking at Kevin, who had just lost his composure, Emma didn't know what to say. She couldn't quite grasp what was happening before her. In the past, Kevin had always been very calm and mature. It felt as if nothing could shake him. But what was going on with him today? Had all the stress got to him? Kevin, noticing Emma's face, forcefully held his laughter back and immediately waved his hands as a form of apology. Keep going. I'm all good now. So I was talking about Jean. PFTTT. Just when Emma was about to continue speaking again, she was once again disrupted by a loud chuckle. This time, she couldn't help but get annoyed. Glaring at Kevin, her tone raised a few pitches. If you want to laugh, just laugh, but don't waste my time. I'm really sorry, but... Hey, Emma, what do you think of makeup remover? Holding on to his stomach, Kevin's face was completely red. Speechless by Kevin's random question, Emma shook her head before responding. I wouldn't know since I don't use makeup. As soon as Kevin heard Emma's response, his smile froze. After a short pause, Kevin returned to his usually calm expression. That pretty much ruined the joke. What joke? Doesn't matter anymore, continue with what you were saying. As if nothing had happened, Kevin nodded at Emma, urging her to continue what she was saying. Sigh, I give up, anyhow I was just about to talk up. Shaking her head and sighing at Kevin's sudden change in attitude, Emma tried to continue what she was trying to say but soon stopped halfway through her sentence. Shortly after, an exclamation escaped from her mouth. Emma? Noticing something odd about Emma's behavior, Kevin glanced at her. Staring in the distance, Emma's eyes sparkled. Her face soon dyed red in excitement. What's going on? Confused, following Emma's line of sight, Kevin's eyes soon paused on a trio walking in their direction. Instantly, Kevin recognized one of the three people. Donna Longburn, his class tutor. Walking with her head down, she looked worn out. Her hair was a mess and her expression was that of utter defeat. It looked as though she had just come back from a tough battle. Looking at her expression, although Kevin didn't know what had happened, he couldn't help but feel a trace of pity for her. Next to her, a tall muscular man with a bald head and sunglasses indifferently glanced at his surroundings. There was this sort of regal feeling coming from him. Almost as if he was a massive lion that ruled over an expansive territory. Although for the most part, his face was indifferent, from time to time, Kevin was able to notice him clicking his tongue in the direction of the last person. Standing in front of them, a young girl with dark orange hair happily chirped throughout the halls of the hospital. From appearances alone, she looked to be a few years younger than Emma. Her skin was crisp and pleasant, and she looked like a regular 14-year-old girl. Noticing something, the young girl's eyes excitedly looked in Kevin and Emma's direction. Pointing in their direction, the young girl urged Donna and the other guy to hurry up. Who is she? Noticing that something wasn't right, tilting his head in confusion, Kevin turned towards Emma. However, his question was met with air as Emma ignored him completely. After a couple of seconds, Emma ran towards the young girl as she shouted at her. "Sister Monica!" Emma. Seeing Emma coming her way, extending her hands forward, they soon embraced each other and laughed. "Look at how much you've grown." Looking at Emma from head to toe, a trace of envy appeared on Monica's face. "I'm now taller than you. That's not something you should be pointing out to someone who you call sister." "You know I'm just messing with you." Smiling evilly, Emma tried to pat Monica on the head. Smack. "Stop it, you brat." Smacking Emma's hand away, Monica's eyes landed on Kevin. Smiling, she said, "You must be Kevin." Confused, Kevin confirmed before asking. "Yes, you are?" As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere around him froze. Be it Emma, Donna, or the muscular guy. Everyone was staring at Kevin in utter shock. How did he not know the identity of the girl in front of him? Especially since she was one of the most popular heroes on Earth at the moment, just how out of touch with the world did someone have to be to not even be able to recognize her? Taken aback for a second, a trace of a smile soon appeared on Monica's face. "Wow, this is a first. Someone who actually doesn't know me, how interesting." Confused, Kevin looked in Emma's direction. Facepalming, Emma whispered. Hero rank 27, the Sunset Witch, Monica Jeffrey. Oh. Inside of a private room in the hospital, sitting in front of Monica, Kevin asked. "So what did you call me here for?" Calmly drinking a cup of tea, Monica briefly glanced at Kevin before softly mumbling to herself. "So handsome." "Excuse me?" Covering her mouth and realizing her mistake, Monica looked away from Kevin. "Oops, Kiam, I meant it's hot in here." Letting out a dry cough as though she was embarrassed, Monica took something out from her pocket and handed it to Kevin. Glancing at what was in Monica's hand, Kevin saw a black card decorated with fine silver patterns. Taking the card, Kevin looked at the fine print on the card. Union, Senior Executive Member, Monica Jeffrey. Seeing Kevin accept the card, Monica smiled and said, "Let's keep it short. We want to recruit you into the Union." Kiam. Observing from behind, Donna coughed a couple of times. Under Donna's glaring eyes, Monica stuck her tongue out. "Fine, let me rephrase. Would you be interested in joining the Union after you graduate from the lock?" So this was what this was about. Playing with the business card in his hands for a couple of seconds, Kevin soon gave it back. Student Kevin? I think you don't understand what's going on here. Me, ranked 27 on the hero ranking, Monica Jeffrey is interested in you. I'm thankful for your interest, but I'm sorry, I'm not planning on joining the Union. With that, Kevin stood up and made his way towards the door. Hey, you, what do I dash? Just as George was about to stop Kevin, raising her hand to stop George, Monica smiled. I'm liking him more and more. Ring. 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 Once again sitting on a chair in the lobby of the hospital, hearing the sound of my phone ringing, I quickly swiped right and answered the call. Employer. Yo, small snake. I heard about what happened in Hallberg. Right, I did reveal to Small Snake who I was. He must have already caught wind of what had happened in Hallberg. Well, as you can hear, I'm fine. That's great, I saw your message, what do you need from me? Thinking for a bit, I suddenly recalled messaging Small Snake a couple of days ago. Prior to when the incident happened. Right, I need you for a job. You're not going to tell me to invest in another stock, right?
Nah.
Maybe another time. I need information this time. Informant Ion? Yup. Pausing for a second, Small Snake responded. Sure, as long as it's something within my capabilities I can do it. Hearing what he had to say, a smirk appeared on my face. Please, with your capabilities, even finding the information of some of the top guilds shouldn't really pose a problem for you. But well, he didn't need to know that I knew about his true capabilities. I want you to tell me all you can find about a guild called Galxicus. Galxicus.
Yeah.
You can do it, right? Yes, but why are you specifically looking into that guild? Isn't that your parents' guild? Oh. So you dug onto my past? Yes. Hearing his blunt reply, I was taken aback for a second before I burst out laughing. I didn't know you were that interested in me. Better safe than sorry. Shaking my head, I crossed my legs and said. So? You think you're up for? However, halfway through my sentence, I paused. Employer. There was a good reason for my pause. That was because. What's your name? Standing in front of me, a young girl with dark orange hair smiled as she looked at me. Sorry, Small Snake, I might have to call you later. What do yo? Tack. Hanging up the phone, I was utterly speechless. What was she doing here? Why was the Sunset Witch standing in front of me? Moreover, if I remembered correctly, wasn't she supposed to be recruiting Kevin and the others? Smiling, Monica placed her hand on her chin and scrutinized my body from top to bottom. After a bit, nodding her head, she said, I can sense that you're practicing a pretty strong art. You must be pretty high ranked in your school, huh? What's your rank? What do you specialize in? Under the barrage of questions, my brows twitched. Damn her and her special power. The reason why Monica was called the Sunset Witch wasn't just because of the color of her hair, but also because of her high affinity with flame scions. Whenever she moved, flames would engulf the area around her, devastating everything that she willed. That was scary, but if that wasn't enough, Monica had a skill that enabled her to detect what sort of art they were practicing. I had completely overlooked this fact. Damn. Monica. Appearing from behind Monica, Donna angrily stormed in her direction. Just as she was about to reach Monica, her eyes paused on me and her footsteps halted for a split second. Turning towards Donna, Monica pointed at me and said, Ah, Donna. You came at the right time. I want to know more about this student. Let's go. Placing her hand on Monica's mouth, Donna forcefully dragged her out of the hospital. But I'm not fin MHMMH. Stop harassing my students and leave already. NOOMHHHM. While I sat speechless looking at the scene before me, Monica tried her best to free herself from Donna's grasps. In the end, she failed and was soon dragged out of the hospital. Fortunately, judging from how she let herself be carried away by Donna, she was only slightly interested in me. Not enough for her to actually stop Donna from dragging her away. Wiping off the sweat that had accumulated on my forehead, I couldn't help but think. I guess I just dodged a bullet. Chapter 74, Homecoming 1. Lock, Class A, 25, Friday 4:45 p.m. Sitting in my usual seat, I listened attentively to the class lecture. Or at least I tried. Despite the fact that 2 weeks had passed since the Hallberg incident, the classroom's atmosphere wasn't as lively as it was back before the incident. Glancing at the classroom, I could see why. Almost a quarter of the students that used to sit around me were now gone. Despite not knowing many people, I found out, a couple of days after the incident, that Evan and Cassandra were part of the people that had died during the incident. The same 2 people that were part of my group. In spite of the fact that I didn't know them that well, the fact that 2 people I was acquainted with had died went to show how tragic those events were. Literally, Anyone could have died that night. All right, that marks the end of the lecture. Snapping me out my thought was the engineering professor's charming voice. Just like before, throughout the whole time I had stayed in the lock, she was the only professor that didn't pay special attention to lineage or rank. Whenever I asked her questions regarding the lecture, she would always patiently and calmly explain what I didn't understand. Therefore, although I didn't necessarily understand what she was teaching, I didn't hate this class. Right after the lecture ended and the professor left the classroom, everyone remained seated. That was because we still had to have our end-of-week tutor time. This was a small session we had every Friday, and it was where Donna, our tutor, would spend the last remaining 15 minutes of the day to share any announcements that have been made by the school. Clank! Right on cue, entering the classroom, Donna made her way towards the podium. Walking, as though the wind was blowing, each of her steps caused a thin purple undulation of magic power to spread across the classroom. Instantly the whole room fell silent. The pressure that emanated from her body caused everyone to stop whatever they were doing. It was evident that she wasn't in the best of moods, and everyone could feel it. Arriving in front of the podium, Donna staked a few papers on the table before clicking her tongue and dismissing them. Sighing, Donna looked at the classroom and spoke. All right, as most of you can probably tell, I'm not in the best of moods. Raising 2 fingers, she said. I have 2 announcements for you guys today. 1, there will be a rank readjustment, and that why. Right after she finished the first half of her sentence, before she could continue speaking, disrupting her speech were whispers that resounded throughout the whole classroom. Rank readjustments? It isn't even the midterms. What's going on? Smack. Quiet. Smacking her hand on the podium, a small shockwave swept through the classroom. As if a strong gust of wind had appeared, everyone was pushed back onto their seats. I included. As a result of her action, the hair I spent 2 minutes styling this morning was now a mess. Great. A couple of seconds after smacking the podium, Donna continued. If some of you are confused as to why your ranks are being readjusted, the answer is simple. It's because there's now less of you. For better or for worse, we have to readjust your ranking according to academy protocols. Placing both hands on the podium, Donna's eyes swept through the classroom before she said. So please be quiet and wait for me to finish announcing the new rankings before announcing the second announcement. Nod. Under Donna's piercing stare, everyone could only helplessly nod their head in agreement. Seeing everyone nod, a trace of a smile appeared on Donna's face. All right, here are the new rankings. Tapping onto her tablet, Donna quickly read through a long list of names. Kevin Voss, still rank 1. Melissa Hall, still rank 2. Troy Durex moves up a rank and is now rank 17. Edward Smith moves up 5 ranks from 739 to 734. Pausing slightly, a slight frown appeared on Donna's brows. It was so subtle that only by paying close attention would anyone have been able to notice it. Lastly, Rindover moves up a total of 200 ranks and is now rank 1550. As soon as my name and rank were announced, I felt multiple eyes staring in my direction. Feigning ignorance, I tried my best to keep a stoic face. With what had happened in Hallberg, I had already expected this to happen. There was no use denying the fact that I had now caught the interest of a few important individuals. Though I didn't like the attention, there was no use crying over spilled milk. I also wanted to point out that the fact that my rank rising by 200 ranks may have contributed to adding a couple of extra stairs. With Donna finally announcing my name, the rank adjustment came to an end. Following that, she cleared her voice and once again spoke. Though her voice was sweet, her tone was cold. For the second announcement, due to recent unfortunate events, after long and arduous hours of talk, the higher-ups have finally come to a unanimous decision to send the first years on a month-long break. Just as she finished announcing, right before anyone could celebrate, Donna instantly poured cold water over them. But don't be too happy yet. After you return, there will be midterm exams, so more than a holiday, this is a short break before midterms. Mourns and sighs resounded throughout the classroom as the students all became crestfallen at the announcement. Well, out of all the people here, I was probably the one that was the most depressed by the announcement. With everything that went down these couple of months, I hadn't had time to focus on my schoolwork. The midterms consisted of 2 exams. The theoretical and the physical. I wasn't worried about the physical exam since if I had to judge my strength, I was currently in the top 100. Maybe top 50 if I fought with my life on the line. But that didn't really matter. My goal was to one day reach the top 10. Being top 100 didn't really interest me in any way. Rank aside, what I was most worried about was the theoretical department. No matter how much I tried to study, I barely got any of the concepts they were talking about in classes. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I was totally hopeless, it's just that for some of the stuff I had to learn, I had to go back and relearn things that were taught back when I was supposed to be in middle school. With me training every day, I barely had enough time to study for the courses, let alone study middle school courses. After I agonized over the problem for a bit longer, I just threw it at the back of my mind. As an experienced procrastinator, I was used to leaving problems till near the deadline. All right, this is the end of the announcements. I hope to see you in a month's time. Seeing that she had already lost everyone's attention, Donna could only conclude tutor time ahead of schedule and dismiss everyone. Packing up her stuff, she soon left the classroom. Clank! Soon as Donna left, I too started packing up my stuff. Today was the last day I stayed in the lock for at least a month. It was finally time to go home. Although I had never met my parents in this world, I would always get messages from them. Be it for normal stuff or nagging. They would always make sure to text me once a day. It was both annoying and heartwarming. Since my parents' death back in my previous world, never had I felt this much love from someone. I couldn't say I disliked this feeling. Feeling a shadow cast over where I was sitting, as I was getting ready to leave the classroom, passing the area where I was sitting, Kevin subtly nodded in my direction, to which I responded in kind. Not a lot changed between us. Although I had talked to Kevin back on the rooftop, we weren't really friends. We would occasionally greet each other whenever we met in the hallway, but that's just about how much our interactions amounted to. Casual acquaintances. That's how I would describe our current relationship. And I liked it that way. No matter how much I liked him as a person, getting too close to him wouldn't do me any good. This was especially so since my interactions with him could lead to me getting swept into his conflicts and potentially changing the plotline. Sometimes I wished I wasn't so stuck up on keeping the plotline consistent. Sigh. Letting out a sigh, finished packing up, I went back to my dorm. This should be enough. Stretching my back, I clapped my hands in satisfaction. Right now my bed was filled with things that I prepared for my month-long trip back home. From clothes to books, I decided to bring them all. Since the trip was going to be that long, I decided to just bring whatever I could bring. With dimensional spaces being a thing, I didn't need to worry about carrying large bags with me. Vroom. Tapping on my bracelet once, everything that was on my bed disappeared. I guess it's about time I Ring. 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 Just as I was about to head out, my phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, I picked up the call. Employer. Yo, Small Snake, did you get what I had asked of you last week? Hearing Small Snake's voice on the other side of the phone, holding on to the phone, I double-checked to see if I forgot to bring anything before heading towards the entrance of my room. Yes, I got all the information that you requested. Checking the time on my watch, with the aid of my shoulder, I pressed my phone to my ear and put on my shoes. All right, perfect, send it to me. Pausing for a slight second, Small Snake hesitated. Small Snake? Noticing something odd about his pause, I frowned and held my phone with my hand. Employer, it's not really my place to say this, but... Taking a deep breath, Small Snake said. Your parents' guild isn't doing well. No, in fact, they are in a terrible situation. Chapter 75, Homecoming, 2. Friday, 9 p.m. Sitting on a bench waiting for the air train to arrive, I absent-mindedly stared at my phone. Looking through the files Small Snake sent me, a strange feeling welled up inside of me. The more I read the files, the stronger the feeling became. Galxicus, information. Guild grade. Bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. History. Guild was established in 2045, with 10 years to its name. Currently graded as a silver-ranked guild and is under command of current guild leader Ronald Dover, ranked hero. Under his guidance, the guild was able to rise from a bronze-graded guild to a silver-graded one. Current situation. Financial distress, debt, 95 million U. Risk of guild relegation, silver? Bronze. Internal power struggle, current guild master under heavy scrutiny by board members. More information. Looking through the information and after pondering for a bit, I somehow got the gist of what was happening. After going through my phone, I found out that the 3-year lock enrollment fee was 30 million U. To some, it may be spare change, but to regular people, it was an absurdly astronomical sum. Prior to when I reincarnated, Ren's parents must have taken a 30 million U loan under the guild's name to finance Ren's tuition fee for the lock. After a long and heated debate, Ren's parents must have been able to convince the board to loan them 30 million U as a form of investment. However, after Ren took the test and was judged to be a ranked talent by the lock, the guild executives must have started pressuring Ren's parents into paying back what they owed. As soon as they saw that Ren wasn't talented, they immediately ceased all formalities with their own guild master and took it as an opportunity to take over the guild. The fact that they were withstanding such a heavy burden yet letting me attend the lock at the same time, went to show how much they loved me. Their son. As I thought more about it, another question emerged in my mind. What happened to the original Ren? After thinking long and hard about it, my face became grim. My current hypothesis was that after receiving his talent grading, he fell into a deep depression due to the guilt he felt towards his parents and chose to end his life, allowing me to take over. But this was just a hypothesis I came up with, only the report as a reference. Perhaps after going back home and assessing the situation more carefully, I could find more about the previous Ren. Maybe there was more to the story than the report told. 9:15 p.m. After having gone through the report a couple of more times, every second that the train wasn't here felt oddly agonizing. It was as if a part of me really wanted it to arrive and quickly send me to my parents' house. But why did I want to meet people that I had never met before so badly? It's not like they were my real parents. Was I perhaps longing for a family that much? I quickly discarded such thought. Although yes, I did want to once again feel the love I felt from my parents back in my previous world, it shouldn't be to the point where I would start longing for it from strangers that I've never met before. Perhaps. Right. What if a part of me still contained the emotions of the previous Ren? What if this longing feeling I was feeling towards my new family was due to the old Ren's influence? Just how much influence did the previous Ren have over me? Clenching my heart, I couldn't help but feel the slow rhythmical palpitations that would increase whenever I dug more onto the previous Ren's family. It hurt. It was the same feeling I felt whenever I thought of my parents back in my previous world. Once I began to think along those lines, it just didn't seem to end. I just started remembering the happy days I spent with my family back in my previous world, when everything wasn't as fucked up as it was now. Their home-cooked meals, their nagging, the fun holidays. All of those memories came flooding down like a dam that had broken into pieces. Phoo. Wiping the corner of my eyes that had slightly reddened, I closed my eyes and tried my best to hide the tears that were threatening to fall at any moment. Just what are you doing to me, Ren? And why now? Station, Lock Square, boarding. A crisp and pleasant voice resounded across the train platforms. Boarding the train, I took a quick glance at my surroundings before choosing a seat on the right side of the train. Sitting on a seat next to the window, I took out my earbuds and played some music. After calming down, my thoughts became more clear. Although I don't know what went over me back then, I knew that the previous Ren had something to do with it. Perhaps he had still not fully died and a small part of him remained inside of me. Perhaps he wasn't and it was just my imagination, I wasn't sure, but whatever it was, I hoped it wouldn't influence my future course of action. If by chance I was forced to do something I didn't want to do due to the old Ren's influence, I wouldn't know what I'd do. Station, Lock Square, departing. As I was in deep thought, the voice coming from the train speaker echoed throughout the whole train and the doors slowly closed. Clank. Central District, Lock Square. Northern District, Verrill Square. Vroom. Lifting in the air, the air train slowly picked up speed and headed towards my destination, the Northern District. Ashton City had a cumulative population of 50 million people. Being the safest and most centralized area in the human domain, it naturally attracted a lot of people. It was massive. Because of its size, Ashton City was divided into 5 different districts. Northern District, Southern District, Eastern District, Western District, and the Central District. The reason why they were split that way was simple. Because apart from the Northern District, every other district was under the jurisdiction of one of the 4 diamond-graded guilds present in Ashton City. Rank 1. Demon Hunter? Southern District. Rank 2. Starlight Guild? Central District. Rank 3. Black Hammer? Western District. Rank 4. Eclipse of Dawn? Eastern District. Although the Union and the central government were the main powers that kept humanity in check, they still allowed the top 4 guilds to take control over certain areas. This way the Union could keep their power centralized and keep guilds satisfied at the same time. And unfortunately for me, the Northern District, where I was headed, was under the jurisdiction of the Union. The annoying bunch. If I remembered correctly, Emma also lived in the Northern District. With her father being the vice director of the Union, as well as the mayor of Ashton City, her house was situated in the Northern District. Fortunately, because each district was humongous, the chances of us meeting weren't high. After the incident in Hallberg, though I didn't talk to her, I would occasionally see her staring in my direction. Back in the lock, she held back her interest because the others were with her, but if by chance met outside of the lock, yeah, better not think about it. Considering her personality, I wouldn't be surprised if she suddenly started digging into me more. Northern District, Verrill Square, arrival. Exiting the train station, I took out my phone and loaded the GPS app. I had no clue where to go from this point on. This way. Following the GPS, turning right of the station, I followed the red dot on the map and headed towards where my parents' house was located. Night had already fallen and the crescent moon high in the sky was gradually being covered by dark, drifting clouds. The lamps around the crosswalk I was walking brightly lit the areas, and despite it being late, people walking their dogs or having a jog were seen everywhere. Should be this? After walking a further 10 minutes, I stopped in front of a residential compound. After being allowed in by the guards, I headed towards Villa 259. Phoo. Taking a deep breath, I looked at the large villa in front of me. Painted in white all over, the villa had 2 balconies and a large garden. Large wooden fences covered the perimeter of the garden, and at the entrance of the villa stood a large wooden door. Looking up at the windows, I could see that the lights were still on, evidently showing that everyone was still awake. It was clear that they were still awake waiting for me. Phoo, all right. Hesitantly, I reached for the doorbell of the house. This was it. It was finally time for me to meet my new parents. Ding! Dong! As soon as I pressed the doorbell, on the other side of the door, the sound of rushed footsteps rushing for the door was instantly picked up by my ears. Clank! Opening the door, brilliantly smiling, a beautiful woman with golden hair and blue eyes greeted me at the door. Welcome home, Ren. Chapter 76, Homecoming, 3. Look at how much you've grown. Squealing in delight from the moment her eyes landed on me, Samantha Dover, my now mother, lunged at me as soon as the door opened. Without having enough time to avoid her, I fell into her embrace. Oak! After a couple of seconds of struggling, I gave up. Oddly enough, I didn't feel repulsed by her hugging. Feeling the warm embrace of my mother, I felt my body became weak and my mind relax. It was an odd yet familiar feeling. It was nice. Let me get a better look at you. After a solid minute, releasing me from her hug, squishing my cheeks with both hands, my mother looked at me with a large smile on her face. Look at how much more handsome you've become. I'm sure every girl in the academy is swooning over your looks. Nodding my head, my mouth twitched. If only that were true. Out of all my stats, only charm refused to increase. What more handsome? Glancing around and feeling the nightly breeze, my mother quickly pulled me into the house. Oh dear, it's better if you come in. We don't want you getting a cold, do we?
Yeah.
Clank. Closing the door behind me, I entered the house. Taking off my shoes and hanging my coat, I quickly followed her deeper into the house. As I walked, I couldn't help but glance at all of the photos hanging on the wall. There were a wide variety of photos on the walls. Photos of the previous Ren, photos of my now parents, and some group photos of my now parent with people whom I presume were from their guild. They looked especially happy in the photo. I didn't understand why they would want to screw them over like that. Turning left of the corridor, I was soon inside of the living room. As I stepped into the living room, my eyes immediately landed on a certain individual. So that's Ronald Dover, my father. Sitting on the sofa looking through some papers, Ronald Dover, my now father, glanced in my direction. Nodding in my direction, he said, "Welcome back." Ah, yes. Dumbly staring at Ronald, my father, those were the words that came out of my mouth. Aside from my eyes, he was a spitting image of the current me. His facial features were identical to mine, and coupled with his jet black hair, he looked like an older version of me. However, if I had to point out the difference between us, it'd be the fact that his face lacked the childish immature nature that I had. His demeanor was a stark contrast from mine, as he looked extremely solemn and serious. "Oh, come on, Ren, don't be shy. Sit next to me." Sitting next to my father, my mother quickly urged me to sit next to her. After hesitating for a split second, under her pressuring stare, I could only obediently sit next to her. After I sat down, tucking her husband's sleeves to make sure he was paying attention, she looked at me and said, "So, tell us how your first semester at your academy was?" Pausing for a second to gather my thoughts, I stared at both of them and started speaking. Well, how do I start? Although I And so I started recounting what had happened to me during my academic stay in the lock. I intentionally left out things such as going to the black market and taking the seat of limit and stuff. When the conversation shifted towards the Hallberg incident, well, let's just say things didn't end well as my mom cursed a lot. I remember her texting me a lot during that time. Fortunately, I reassured her that I was fine. If not, I wouldn't be surprised if she suddenly packed up her stuff and went to Hallberg. As I talked, I was slightly uncomfortable at first, but the more I talked, the more at ease I felt. It felt as if this was one of the many talks I had with them over the years. It felt strangely nostalgic and familiar, which was a very odd feeling. As I was talking, from what I observed, my now father, Ronald Dover, although he looked cold on the exterior, he was quite warm. He wasn't a man of many words like my mother, but from time to time he would occasionally join the conversation to add his input. Although it didn't look like much, his little inputs would always keep the conversation going, and the room was soon enveloped in a harmonious atmosphere. This atmosphere. This warmth. Peta. Peta. Feeling hot tears streaming down my cheeks, I froze for a second before quickly wiping them away from my face. Sorry. I don't know what got over me. Seeing me cry, my mom immediately lunged in my direction and took me in her embrace.
Aww.
I know you've been through a lot. Here, you can cry in your mama's arms. Feeling myself in her warm arms, for a split second my mind blanked. Soon after, as if a dam had broke, tears burst down from my cheeks. Sent into a different world where everything was different, and having spent the last 2 months by myself, with no one to rely on but myself, her warm words and embrace caused hidden feelings that were within me to surge. My father soon also joined the hug, and I soon found myself buried beneath the both of them. All right, stop, I'm fine now. After a couple of minutes, after I calmed down, I was able to free myself from their embrace. Fixing my clothes, which were now a mess, I tried to switch the topic. So that's all for what happened. How's the guild doing? Brightly smiling, making eye contact with her husband for a second, my mother said. Everything is perfect. Apart from the fact that we have to put in some extra hours here and there, everything is going well. Looking at them for a second, I smiled and leaned back on the sofa. Is that so? I'm glad you're doing fine then. Liars. I already knew everything. A part of me felt a little bitter at the fact that they still hid their troubles from me, but I sort of understood where they were coming from. They didn't want their problems to affect me, and rightfully so. Why would they want their child who was studying at the best academy in the human domain to feel pressured? All they wanted was for their son to study happily while they support him from the back. Disrupting our conversation was the sound of small footsteps. Gingerly walking into the living room, a small girl wearing oversized pajamas and a large teddy bear on her right hand drowsily rubbed her little eyes. She had smooth black hair that fell all the way to her tummy, and her eyes that were a similar shade of blue to my eyes hazily looked at her teddy in her arms. Her rosy plump cheeks that had a small blush to them made anyone who was near her want to squeeze them tightly. Even I, as I watched her enter the room, had an urge to squeeze those cheeks. Looking up in my direction, tilting her little head, the young girl said, "Big Butter?" Freezing on the spot. My eyes stared at the young girl that had entered the room. So that's my sister Nola? Looking at the small girl that I had just entered the room, I instantly realized that she was supposed to be my 2-year-old sister. Nola. Butter? Calling for me for a second time, Nola extended her arms in my direction. How cute! Smiling at Nola, my mother looked at Nola before looking back in my direction. Nola tried her best to stay awake just to wait for you. Picking up Nola, my mother walked in my direction and handed her to me. After hesitating for a second, supporting her from her little butt, I held Nola in my arms. Hooking her little arms around my neck, Nola's face brightened up as she closed her eyes and immediately fell asleep. Feeling her breathing even on my neck, I could only stand rooted on the spot. I didn't move because I was afraid of waking her up. My eyes darted towards my parents asking for help, but I was only met with their smiling faces. What was I supposed to do now? I was a loner back in my previous world. I never interacted with kids, nor did I have any. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. But strangely, I didn't dislike this feeling. As I held Nola in my arms, a strange protective feeling welled inside of me. It felt as if nothing would stop me from protecting this child in my arms. Taking a better look at Nola, who was innocently sleeping in my arms, I realized that even without the old Ren's emotions affecting me, I would do anything to protect her. After holding Nola for 5 more minutes, my mom stood up and took back Nola from my arms. "All right, give Nola back to me. You must be tired, go to sleep." Soon she sent me to my room, to which I happily agreed as I was indeed feeling tired. Walking upstairs, I entered what seemed to be my room. It was a decently sized room that was similar in size to my room in the lock. However, compared to the lackluster decorations back in the lock, this room was filled with posters and magazines as well as other decorations. Glancing around the room, I sat on the bed in the corner of the room and took a deep breath. Although it was my first time here, it did not feel unfamiliar. It was a strange feeling. It was a different feeling from when I was back in the lock. I felt more at peace here. It seemed that this body remembered this place well. Standing up and looking through the shelves of the room, I saw a picture of the previous Ren with his parents. Taking the photo frame to get a better look at the image, I saw him holding a bouquet of flowers smiling alongside his parents in front of the academy. Pung. However, as soon as I held on to that picture, I felt my heart sting for a split second. Flinching slightly, I almost dropped the frame on the ground. Frowning, I took a better look at the picture. And there I saw it. No. I could feel it. Beneath Ren's smile in the photo hid deep sadness and anguish. Just what happened to you? What caused you to be that way? Smack. Get yourself together. There was no point in investigating what had happened to the previous Ren now. I believed that by the end of the month I would be able to discover what had happened to Ren and resolve his regrets. Perhaps this was the only way his emotions would leave my body and I would finally have this body to myself. I wasn't really sure, but he at least deserved that much. For having given me a second chance as well as given me a happy and warm family, resolving his regrets was something I needed to do. Staring at the white ceiling of the room, I bitterly smiled as I thought back of what I told myself moments before I entered the house. During that time, I had repeatedly told myself not to get overly attached to my parents in this world. I told myself that there was no point in getting attached to some random strangers that I had never met before. But who was I kidding? Remembering Nola's tender cheek resting on my shoulder just moments before, as well as my parents' warm faces as they consoled me, I already knew it was already too late for me to not get attached. Pumph. Slumping on the white mattress, I thought to myself. This feeling, it isn't so bad. Chapter 77, Homecoming, 4. After waking up, I headed downstairs to the kitchen. The first thing I saw as soon as I entered the kitchen was a small note left on the table. Picking it up, I read through the contents. Ren, if you're reading this, your mom and dad have already gone to work. Once you wake up, bring Nola to the park outside and enjoy your weekend. I've already sent you some money to your account for when you go out. At around 12 p.m. you should come down to the guild with Nola. After we are done sorting out some stuff we will bring you guys to lunch. See you soon. Love, Mom and Dad. They're already at work, huh? I guess with everything that was going on in the guild, it wasn't strange for them to work on weekends too. Neatly folding the small note, I headed towards the dining table where warm dishes covered in a thin plastic film were already prepared. As I sat on the table, lifting the plastic film, the fragrance of the bacon and the eggs on the plate instantly invaded my nostrils. Without skipping a beat, I devoured everything that was on the plate. Delicious. After eating my fill, patting my now bloated belly, I checked the time on my watch. 6:45 a.m. It was still very early in the morning, and looking outside the window I could see the sun slowly brightening up the surroundings. Since I had nothing to do, I decided to train for a couple of hours before waking Nola up and bringing her to the park. Clank! Sliding the glass doors that led to the garden, the morning breeze instantly cooled my body. Walking in the garden, feeling the lush green grass tingling at my naked feet, I took a deep breath and took out my sword from my dimensional space. Foo! Releasing a long breath, a white glow slowly started emanating from my body. Following which, with my sword, I drew 3 circles in the air. Voom! As I drew the circles, after each full circulation, a translucent ring wobbled in the air. After the first ring formed, closing my eyes I drew a second and a third. Voom! Right after the third ring formed, I once again closed my eyes and concentrated my mind. As I did, the circles slowly started revolving around my body. Swoosh! Pointing towards my right side, one of the rings flew in the direction of where I pointed. With my left hand, I pointed upwards and another ring flew upwards. In the direction of where I pointed. Like that, for half an hour, I continuously moved the rings around me. Swoosh! 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 After 2 minutes, whenever a ring would dissipate in the air, I would quickly create a new one and continue with what I was doing. After the Hallberg incident, I didn't stop training. In fact, as a way to get my mind off of things, I trained even harder than before. And because of that, my second sword art Ring of Vindication reached the minor realm of mastery. With the sword art reaching the minor realm of mastery, I could now freely control the rings I created. If I wanted to, I could make them revolve around me for as long as the ring could last. Even better, the rings could now withstand the full impact of ranked individuals without breaking. Even ranks would now have a hard time breaking the rings that I made, creating a perfect defense system. As far as rings went, as of right now I could comfortably control 3. I could do 4, but that would strain my head too much due to my lack of control over my mana. In the future, the more I mastered this technique, the more rings I could control. Moreover, the more I mastered the technique, the better the rings would get with gravitational pull and elemental discharge being effects I could add to the rings. This was a massive improvement in my strength as now I wouldn't have to worry about needing to waste time to use the keiki style. With the rings protecting me, I could quickly control them to protect me whenever I was readying myself to execute a movement from my main sword art. Howum. 9 a.m. As white steam dissipated from my body, checking the time, I stretched my back and yawned. I guess it's about time to wake up Nola. I had been training non-stop for about 2 hours. Looking at my watch and seeing the time, I knew it was about time to wake up Nola. Heading back into the house, I first took a quick shower before entering Nola's room. Wouldn't want to make Nola smell my sweat. Creak! Opening the door of Nola's room, I tiptoed towards her cradle. Looking at her little body sleeping soundly with her teddy in her arms, I whispered lightly. Hey, Nola, it's time to wake up. After whispering a couple of more times to try to wake her up, poking her cheeks a couple of times, Nola's eyelids slowly opened. Broader? Yes, it's Big Brother Ren. Smiling, I picked her up from her cradle and brought her out of her room. Still groggy from having just woken up, Nola leaned on my shoulder and stared at the ground. Smiling, I brought her to the kitchen. Since I had to bring her to the park, I gave her a cup of milk for breakfast before dressing her up. After styling Nola's hair into 2 ponytails, I brought her towards the entrance of the house. I'm done. That's great. Putting on her shoes, wearing a one-piece dress decorated with flower patterns, Nola took my hand and followed me out of the house. All right, let's go. Clank. Closing the door behind me, we soon left for the park. Arriving at the park, Nola's eyes immediately started shining with excitement. Looking at the park, I couldn't help but be impressed by how beautiful it was. As the sun brightly lit the park, in the middle of it was a large lake where swans and ducks happily swam on the surface of the water. Near the lake, a bunch of children were happily playing in the playground with their friends and parents. Whizzing through the air, the children happily screamed as their parents pushed them from behind. Glancing at Nola, whose eyes were glued on the playground, I bitterly shook my head and headed in that direction. The playground had many different things that children could play with. It had multiple swings, a large slide, and a castle, which seemed to be the most popular attraction in the playground. Near the playground, spread out over the vibrant green grass, sitting on large covers, families could be seen basking under the sun and happily chatting with each other. Wow, is that you, Ren? As I was walking towards the playground with Nola, I suddenly heard someone call my name. Turning my head in the direction of where the sound came from, I soon spotted 2 individuals heading in my direction. On the left, a guy with dark hair and green eyes smiled as he looked in my direction. On his ears were a couple of earrings, and coupled with his white designer t-shirt and tight black pants, I could immediately tell that whoever he was, he came from a relatively prominent family. It is you. How long has it been? Seeing me turn around and confirming that I was indeed the person he was looking for, the youth's smile deepened. Glancing next to him, the long-haired youth pointed towards me as he nudged his friend with his elbow. Get a hold of this, Greg, it's Ren. Indifferently nodding, wearing long jeans, a red sweater, and a black cap, a relatively muscular and tall individual slowly walked in my direction. Who? Staring at the 2 individuals making their way towards my direction, tilting my head to the side, I frowned. Who were they? Were they perhaps the old Ren's friends? Judging from how friendly they being, I assumed they were, but why did my heart feel a slight sense of repulsion and disgust? Just as I was pondering over the feeling I was having in my heart, hooking his arm around my neck, the long-haired youth happily said, How are you doing? I'm doin'. Right before I could finish my sentence, exerting the strength equivalent to a ranked individual, the long-haired youth whispered in my ear. Listen carefully, little. Shh. *T, didn't I tell you before to never appear in this area again? Taken aback by his sudden change in attitude, I was left speechless for a second. What? Don't tell me you forgot? Staring at my reaction and misunderstanding it for something else, the long-haired youth strengthened his grip on my neck before saying, Well, it looks like we might have to teach you a lesson. Looking at Nola, who was holding my hand, I let out a long breath before saying, Foo, wait, not here. Raising his brow, the long-haired youth smirked and mockingly said, What makes you think you can decide what we do? Glaring at him, I looked at Nola and reminded them that I wasn't alone. Can't you see I'm with my little sister? Noticing my sister, clicking his tongue, the long-haired youth removed his hand from my neck before smirking. I see, you don't want to look bad in front of your sister, right? We sure hope nothing happens to her. Ignoring his last words, bending down towards Nola, I looked at her in the eyes before saying, Nola, can you do me a favor? Curiously looking at the 2 people that had come, Nola looked back at me and nodded her head. Seeing her nod her little head, I smiled and took out my phone. Pointing towards a nearby bench, I said, Here, take my phone and go sit on that bench over there. Looking at the phone, Nola shook her head. Nana wants to be with Big Waiter. How about this, after I come back I will buy you whatever ice cream or candy you want. Really? Yes. Nodding her head enthusiastically, Nola ran to the bench I previously pointed at and sat down. Seeing how enthusiastic and obedient she became as soon as I bribed her, I couldn't help but bitterly smile. Kids were sure easy. All right, let's go. After making sure Nola was fine, I looked at my two friends and smiled. It's been a while since we haven't seen each other. Don't worry, for the sake of your sister we will make this short. Once again hooking his arm around my neck, the black-haired youth nudged his friend, Greg, to follow him. Walking towards a more secluded area of the park, whilst still making sure that Nola was in my sights, the smile on my face slowly faded away. It's been a while since I had been this pissed. To think I was now being picked on by a bunch of extras that didn't even appear in the story. It was understandable if it was the lock, but this wasn't. I didn't need to hide my strength here. Especially if it was against some extras that never appeared in the story. In fact, I was tired of remaining passive. If this was the lock, things may have been different, but now. Vroom. KHH, what? How? Right after making sure no one was looking, releasing my ranked pressure, both individuals felt a massive pressure envelop them. Bam. Bam. Kuh. Kuka. Heavily punching them both in the stomach, kneeling down, a green acidic substance escaped from both of their mouths as their faces became white as paper. The only reason they even made it this far was because I let them. Judging from how they knew me, this was a good chance for me to find more about what the old Ren's life used to be like. However, since they pissed me off, it was about time I let them know their place. Cracking my neck, I bent down and looked at them in the eyes. Let's make this quick. Chapter 78, Galxicus 1. I'm done, Nola, come here. Smiling, I waved at Nola in the distance and urged her to come to me. Nodding her little head, putting the phone away, Nola ran in my direction. Up. Lifting her into my arms, I smiled and pointed towards the playground in the distance. Let's go play. Yes. Walking towards the playground, although I was smiling, that was merely a facade I put on since Nola was with me. My mind was in a current state of turmoil. After politely conversing with the two individuals, I found out a few things. First off, the long-haired guy's name was Simon Perk and his father was a relatively influential person inside of a bronze-graded guild. The guy next to him was called Greg Topaz and he was his childhood friend as well as bodyguard. The reason why they knew me was because the old Ren and they used to attend the same middle school. Fermin Middle School. One of the top middle schools in the Northern District. However, from what I've uncovered from my talk, the previous Rendover was a social outcast. It wasn't like this before, but after a series of events, he became an outcast. This probably happened right after he got accepted in the lock. Although I wasn't able to get a clear picture of what had happened since they weren't part of Ren's class, I was able to deduce that an important event had happened in Fermin Middle School. Which was enough of a start for me, I at least had a direction to focus on now. Waiter? As I was busy pondering over the old Ren's matters, feeling a light tug on my pants, I saw Nola's droopy eyes staring at my shoes. Are you tired already? Nodding her head, Nola extended her hands in my direction. 11:20 a.m. It should be time anyways. Checking the time, I picked Nola from the ground and left the park. It was about time I headed to the guild. I wonder what's it like being in a guild. It should be this one. Arriving in front of a large skyscraper that was about 200 meters in height, and had about 80 floors, I brought Nola inside of the building with me. From what I had been told by my parents, the whole building was used as the base for their guild Galxicus. Although they didn't own the building, they managed to rent it out for a reasonable monthly price. Arriving in front of the elevators at the entrance of the building, I pressed the button and called for one. As I waited for the elevator to arrive, I took a quick glance at my surroundings. Surrounded by glass, the interior of the bottom floor was brightly lit by the sun in the sky. White marble floor covered the entire pavement, and people moving to and fro inside of the building was a constant sight. It looked extremely busy. Ding! Entering the elevator and pressing on the 25th floor button, the elevator doors closed and a slight pushing sensation appeared beneath my feet. Ding! In a matter of seconds, the elevator reached the 25th floor, and the doors slid sideways. Clank! Wow! As soon as the elevator doors opened, a whole different world appeared before my eyes. The 25th floor looked like a luxurious office space. The floor was extremely large, with a space that could accumulate over hundreds of people at a time. The area I was currently in was the main reception area of the guild. The higher floors were office spaces for administrative management, and the lower floors were for heroes as they provided training facilities and other things heroes required, like a potion station and supply replenishment areas. The ground was covered in a red carpet, and large TV screens were installed in the corner of the space with constant updates on the news and which dungeons were available for raids. People wearing combat suits followed by people wearing formal ones appeared everywhere. Most likely, they were the members of the guild being followed by their managers. Looking at the scenery before me, I couldn't help but be amazed. So this was my parents' guild, Galxicus. Ren. Snapping at me out of my reverie, was the cheerful sound of my mom's voice. Ren, you're just in T-dash. However, freezing mid-sentence, my mother's eyes landed on Nola, who was standing next to me. The more she looked, the grimmer her face became. Ren. Glancing back at me, her eyes became cold, and her previous cheerful demeanor disappeared. Taken aback by her sudden shift in attitude, I didn't know what to do as cold sweat suddenly appeared on my back. What happened? And why does it look as if a demon had suddenly appeared behind my mother? Something wasn't right. What's wrong? Are you telling me that you can't tell what you've done wrong? What I did wrong? Frowning, I recalled everything that had happened today. Apart from taking Nola to the park and beating a couple of kids, I don't think there was anything to warrant her reaction. Why was she so angry? Sigh. Seeing how clueless I was, pointing towards Nola, her tone raised a few pitches. Just look at the state Nola is in. Nola? Glancing at Nola in confusion, I didn't see anything wrong with her. Apart from the fact that both her pockets were filled with candy and she was holding an ice cream cone in each hand, I didn't see anything strange. Oh my God. What kind of son did I raise? Helplessly shaking her head, my mom went to Nola, and apart from one ice cream, she immediately took everything from her. Nola did try to protest, but under our mother's seriousness, she could only turn her head in my direction, to which I could only avoid and pretend to feign ignorance. I'm sorry. After putting away all of the candy, Samantha, my mother, took Nola by her hand and urged me to follow her. All right, forget it. Follow me up to meet your dad. Okay. Just as I was about to follow my mother up, the whole floor became quiet before suddenly everyone started panicking. He's here. Everyone get ready. Stopping whatever they were doing, crowding towards the elevator, a bunch of guild members bowed down. Clank! As the elevator doors opened, exiting them was the vice guild leader of the Galxicus Guild. Martin Lorwick. His shoulder-length hair was curved up slightly, and he had a well-trimmed black beard that nicely fitted around his jaw. The solemnity given off by his extraordinary appearance was similar to that of my father, as every step he would take caused all the guild members near him to shake in their boots. Hugh. Looking around the room with his snake-like eyes, the vice-guild master of the Galxicus Guild, Martin Lorwick, murmured quietly. This guild is going to the *ters. His voice, which was deep, was loud enough for most people around him to hear. With a moderate arrogance and a lethargic attitude, Martin Lorwick pushed back the people flocking in his direction. Staring at him in the distance, my eyes narrowed into slits as I closely scrutinized him. According to the reports that Small Snake sent me, he was the man leading the inner conflicts within the guild. He was a ranked hero, just slightly weaker than my father, and was selected by the guild investors to become the vice director of the guild. With the aid of the board of directors, he managed to convince them into overthrowing the current guild leader. My father. As I closely scrutinized Martin, another wave of murmurs engulfed the entire floor as a youth walked out from behind him. The youth was wearing a white-colored, long-sleeved loosely fit t-shirt with a strange insignia sewn on the back of it. His black obsidian eyes, which were brighter than ordinary people's, had hints of wisdom hidden deep within them. The youth's face was quite handsome and outstanding, with his skin being smooth without any imperfections. His long black-colored hair dangled to his shoulders, and his demeanor carried hints of arrogance and pride. As he followed Martin from behind, with his back straight, he would look down on everyone present in the room. Almost as if he owned the place. As Martin and the youth were walking, Martin's eyes suddenly drifted towards the other end of the hall where three individuals stood. A smirk soon emerged on his face. Follow me, Alex. Plowing through the crowd of people, Martin and the youth named Alex soon stopped in front of me and my mother. Looking at my mother, Martin politely smiled and said, "It's a pleasure seeing you here, Samantha." Frowning, a trace of disgust appeared on my mother's face before it quickly disappeared as fast as it came. Smiling politely, she greeted him back. "Hello, Martin. It's been a long time since we've spoken to each other like." Soon they started conversing with each other. However, if someone wasn't paying close attention to their conversation, one wouldn't be able to notice all the hidden meanings behind each other's words. My husband indeed worked very hard to build the guild from the ground up. But of course, that was largely due to how much I was helping him. As my mom was conversing with Martin, the youth behind him walked up to me. Seizing me up, a smirk soon appeared on his face. "Are you the talentless waste who was able to attend to the lock due to how their father stole from his own guild to pay for his son's tuition?" The moment I saw him, I just knew. I knew things were going to be like this. Smiling politely, I said, "If you're talking about the D-ranked talent student attending the lock, that would indeed be me. I just don't understand how someone like you could even manage to end dash." Just as Alex was about to finish his sentence, audible murmurs resounded the floor as the people around us started separating. Soon, with a presence that was even more domineering to that of Martin, my father arrived. "Guild Master. Guild Master. Morning, Guild Master." Furrowing his brows, Martin quickly put on a big smile as he looked at Ronald. "Guild Master, I was just catching up with Samantha." Nodding his head towards Martin, Ronald ignored him and looked at my mother. Seeing that everything was all right, he glanced in my direction. "This Ren?" Noticing my dad looking at me, Martin's eyes shined for a split second before he immediately arrived beside me and patted me on the shoulder. "How long has it been since I saw you? By the way, have you Mo? It seems like they've already met. Let me introduce him to you." Pointing towards Alex that was standing in front of me, Martin's tone carried hints of pride as he spoke. "This here is Alex Cloudburn. He is currently attending Nord Academy, the best academy in the Northern District, and is a B-ranked talent I picked up. Whilst looking at my father, Martin's eyes paused slightly on me before emphasizing the B-ranked talent part when he was introducing Alex. Looking at Alex, who didn't shy away from my father's eyes, my dad nodded his head and said, "That's indeed very good talent you have picked up." Smirking, Martin raised his hands in the air as the tone of his voice increased a few pitches. "Good. Just good? We are talking about a B-ranked talent here, Ronald." Shaking his head in disappointment, Martin continued. "I know your son enrolled in the lock, but with his talent, he's in a completely different world compared to Alex." Without giving a chance for my father to speak, glancing around him, in a voice that was audible enough for everyone to hear, Martin looked at my father and said, "Since you seem to be more impressed by your son more than Alex, how about we let our two kids spar? You know, just to show our members how much the prospects we've chosen have improved." Glancing around, I could instantly see the momentum of the conversation falling in Martin's direction. By not giving a chance for my father to speak, Martin carried the conversation to the point where it suddenly became a duel between me and Alex. His goal was obvious. If my father refused, his reputation would fall as it would make him seem like a coward. And if he accepted and I lost miserably, his reputation would also take a hit. Moreover, knowing the previous Ren, Martin judged that his plan was foolproof, hence why he acted fast. However, he miscalculated something. I donned dash. After a long silence, just as my father was about to refuse Martin's provocation, tugging his clothes, I firmly looked at him in the eyes and said, "Dad, accept. Ren do dash." Raising his hand to stop my mother from protesting, staring at me for a solid minute, my dad looked back at Martin for a couple of seconds before nodding. "Okay, we accept." "Great, let's meet in the arena in half an hour time." Laughing out loud, Martin took one last glance at us before waving and leaving with Alex. Right after Martin left, the crowd around us dispersed, leaving behind me and my family. Turning his attention towards me, Ronald Dover, my father, solemnly asked, "Are you sure?" Smiling, I nodded my head. Never been more sure. Chapter 79, Galxicus 2. Descending down the elevator. I quickly headed towards where the changing rooms were located. Suddenly, just as I was about to enter the changing room, an official guild member wearing a black suit stopped me. Frowning, pointing towards my name tag, I said in a somewhat disgruntled voice, "I'm the one participating in the fight, can't you see?" "It's not that. If you want to get changed you must head to another room." Pointing to my right, the man pointed at a pathway next to the main entrance. "Oh, thank you." Thanking the man, I walked in the direction he pointed at and soon arrived at my assigned waiting room. Waiting room 3. Entering the changing room, I walked in and sat down on a random seat. Phoo. Letting out a long breath, I prepared my mind for what was to come. From what I've gathered, my opponent, Alex Cloudburn, was a spear user whose rank was a rank lower than mine. Meaning that I was stronger than him. At least stats-wise. Coming into this match, I decided that apart from using the Keiki style, I would go all out. Meaning that I was about to expose my rank. After thinking for a bit, I decided that pretending to be weak all the time wasn't something that would benefit me. At least not when I wasn't in the lock. There was no longer a need for me to stop myself from exposing a part of my abilities. It was fine to expose some of it. Not all of it, but some of it. And that's exactly what I was planning. Recalling Alex's arrogant face as he looked at me in disgust, I was sure I wasn't going to pull any punches in our fight today. I made up my mind to absolutely destroy and humiliate him in front of everyone present. I needed to destroy Martin's rising momentum and give my father some breathing space. And the only way to achieve this was through thoroughly beating the crap out of Alex. Beat him to the point where he would forever remember the humiliation. Fortunately for him, before the match was decided, I had told my dad to block people from taking videos or photos of the match, saving him from future humiliations. When I asked my dad for this request, he initially thought that it was because I was afraid of it spreading on the web, but my reason couldn't be any more different. I wanted to leave a bit of leeway for myself in case I would be forced to use the cakey style to win. If videos of our fight were to be exposed to the world to see, though unlikely, there was bound to be someone out there who would be able to recognize what sword art I practiced. Chances were that once exposed, my family would definitely be put in danger. Although I wasn't worried to the point I felt that I would need to use the cakey style for my current spar, I just wanted to reduce any chances of this coming back to bite me in the future. Galxakis Stadium. The Guild's official arena was designed to be a more modern version of the Colosseum. The central arena was split into 3 squared platforms, while the stand started 10 meters above the platforms and could house more than 2,000 people. The design was extremely popular amongst the Guild members as there would always be fights happening in the arena. Large TV screens stood at the top of the stadium, giving a clear picture of what was happening in the arenas for the spectators to see. Because the screens were controlled by the Guild Master, Ronald Dover, there was no need for him to worry about the footage being leaked. 10 minutes before the start of a duel, the guest seats were packed full of people. Because of the earlier warning by the Guild Master, photos and videos were prohibited from being taken during the match. Some assumed that it was because he didn't want videos of his son losing miserably to Alex to spread, whilst others thought it was because he didn't want people to find out about the internal struggles happening within the guild. Either way, no one was really against the idea of not being able to take photos or videos since they weren't expecting a decent match to begin with. Can Ren do it? Watching the battle arena from above, inside of a glass cube, a few individuals sat on large red sofas. Worriedly glancing towards the arena, Samantha Dover glanced at her husband and squeezed his hand tightly. "I believe in him." Nodding his head, Ronald Dover too looked at the arena. However, even though he didn't show outwardly, he too was extremely nervous. This fact was quickly picked up by his wife, who felt the grip on her hand tighten. Recalling his meeting with Alex 30 minutes ago, Ronald couldn't help but worry a bit. This is going to be a tough match for Ren. Humph. Sitting a few rows behind Ronald, Martin arrogantly looked at the arena below him as he sipped on some wine. Twirling the wine cup in his hands, Martin looked at Ronald before slowly saying, "I hope your son can last long enough for this to actually be considered a match." Ignoring Martin's provocations, Ronald kept his eyes on the arena, causing Martin to clench his teeth in anger. "Just you wait, you bastard, just you wait until Alex absolutely destroys your son in front of the whole guild. I want to see if you can ignore me then. It's starting." Tisk. Seeing the lights around the stadium turn off, Martin crossed his arms and leaned against the back of the seat. From the way he was smiling, it was obvious that he was confident in Alex's chances of winning. The informal duel between the Vice Guild Master and Guild Master was starting. Standing in the middle of the arena, a middle-aged man equipped with a headset and a microphone stared at the audience with a big smile on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a duel between Vice Guild Master Representative Alex Cloudburn and the Guild Master Representative as well as son, Ren Dover." Pausing slightly, to keep the crowd in suspense, the host said, "How will Ren Dover, who was rated as a D-ranked talent, overcome Alex Cloudburn, who was listed as a B-ranked talent? Isn't the result already obvious?" Looking at the crowd, the host put on a confused expression as he said the last bit. However, his expression soon changed as he spoke with more enthusiasm. "However, don't lose me just yet, crowd. Did you know that Ren Dover over here is also a student at the Lock? Yes, the most prestigious academy that there is?" With all the information he had, the host tried his best to hype up the match as much as he could. And this was evidently achieved as the cheers around the stadium intensified. Soon, a translucent blue barrier covered the whole arena. The blue film, which was created out of mana, was made to prevent the shockwaves from the fights to leak out. This way, if things got out of hand, the spectators wouldn't be affected. "Oh, I see Big Brwader." Pointing towards the arena, Nola couldn't help but shout as soon as she saw Ren's figure slowly walking into the arena. "Come Nola, cheer for your brother." Nervously staring at Ren, who walking out from the right passageway, Samantha Dover held Nola tightly in her arms and nervously bit her lips. "Please be safe. Are you ready?" "Yes." Led by the staff, I walked up to the main arena stage. As soon as my foot stepped into the arena, the rumbustious cheers coming from the crowd instantly drowned out any other sound. Wah-yeah. Just as I was about to get adjusted to the cheers, an even more boisterous round of cheers engulfed the entire arena, almost turning me deaf. Entering the arena after me, Alex waved at the crowd as he posed with his spear in his hand. His every pose and action would arouse more cheers and claps from the crowd. Ignoring him, I decided to look around me. First, I took a good look around the arena. A translucent mana barrier surrounded the arena with thousands of spectators looking down. On a small podium next to the arena, a referee looked at his watch as he waited for me and Alex to get into positions. The more I took notice of my surroundings, the more I felt this indescribable pressure and excitement overwhelmed me. It somehow filled me with energy. While I was shaking from this strange sensation, Alex walked up from the other side. Arriving in front of his designated location, he looked at me and said, "You got lucky. With a puny talent like yours, you actually managed to enroll at the lock while I had to settle for the second best option. How is it that someone of your caliber can enter the academy and I can't?" Without saying a word, I looked at him straight into the eyes. Although his words had some truth to them, right now he was merely trying to shake my mentality. This was a common practice used when opponents faced each other in duels. Regardless of who your opponent was, a key component in increasing your chances of winning was to get into your opponent's heads. If you managed to enter their heads, the chances of you losing drastically reduced. A person's mentality was one of the most important things fighters needed to take into consideration before fighting. A person with a weak mentality would find it much harder to win compared to someone who remained rational throughout the whole fight. Counting down. 3. Glancing between me and Alex a couple of times, the host started counting down. Shing, shing, scraping his spear on the ground, Alex smirked in my direction. 2. Igniting his mana, a red hue slowly started coating around Alex's body and his spear. In contrast, a white glow enveloped me. 1. Leaning forward, Alex shifted his center of gravity towards his right foot that had dug deep into the ground. Currently, the distance that separated me and Alex was about 10 meters. It was a distance Alex could close in just a few seconds. This meant that as soon as the match started, I had 3 seconds to either defend or counterattack whatever he was planning on doing. Gripping onto my sword, a trace of a smile appeared on my lips. Fortunately, I had a plan. I already knew what to do. Start.